In honor of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, we welcome everyone to this community conversation with Senior Manager, Specialty Compliance and Ethics Attorney Mark S. Chang. From Ironman triathlons to cybersecurity, data privacy, trifecta, Mr. Chang works with cross-functional stakeholders to provide value-added guidance, effective execution, and practical results in the fast-changing cybersecurity data privacy risk management landscape where legal, management, and information technology departments collaborate. Mr. Chang has a very impressive educational and professional background. He is a WMU Cooley grad, and we are honored to have him with us today as we reflect on the contributions and influence of Asian Americans and Pacific Islander Americans to the history, culture, and achievements of the United States. Without further ado, Mr. Chang, we welcome you back, and we thank you for joining us today, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Monica, and I'm always super happy to see all our Cooley family, especially folks who I had the chance to go to school with, as well as learn from. Professor Kavanaugh being one of the first people I actually ran into in Lansing when I got there, a couple of decades back. And right now, I'm not actively practicing law, but I'm definitely still utilizing my legal education and background on a daily basis in this legal compliance perspective of the work in data privacy. So yeah, it's super happy to be here. Full disclaimer, these the statements and views I make today is my personal view. It doesn't represent the company I work with, and also because me as an immigrant coming in to speak on this Asian American Heritage Month may be not as a complete of a picture compared to those people who are born and raised here. So I just want to get a disclaimer out for those people who would like to learn a little bit about the experience being here for as we celebrate this month of May 2023.
Would you be able to give us sort of some information on, well, and I'll start by saying there's been this increase, obviously, in anti-Asian bias over the last several years. How do you suggest, or how would you suggest that we as a legal community and legal professionals challenge that and best act as allies?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question, Monica. It's definitely been a very interesting yet alarming time to be Asian and Asian American here in this country. As you could probably recall, just a few years ago, starting in February or March of 2020, you had then a lot of the alarming news coming out from COVID, that started it somewhere in Asia. And then now there were a lot of, I guess, narrative being spun out that caused a lot of people to either panic or concern or get scared, thinking that people who look Asian, or, come from a certain part of the world could be the source of spreading COVID. And of course, at the time we did not have the vaccine available, and as well as any kind of additional resources to have the proper protective measures. So at that time, there are a huge spike of violence or discrimination or just any kind of a negative situation that happened to people who may look Asian. In fact, there are several reports that report incidents that happen to Latinos who look Asian, right? Asian. So that's definitely a concern. And now is the rhetoric getting a little bit better? Well, I'm not quite sure per se, because there are still quite a frequent reports of people who are being subjected to a heightened or increased level of this kind of injustice. So from the perspective of being a legal professional, I think the awareness of this kind of issue happening to people of certain background or cultural, uh, you know, origins would definitely be a very important fact. And in addition to that, a lot of people who are now experiencing this kind of issues may want to seek out legal helps, but many of them, due to language or even cultural kind of barriers, may not have the resource or ways to, find those, I guess, information available in the particular language and so on and so forth. Recently, there was a mass shooting in Monterey Park, California, in a dance studio, which was very unfortunate. It's part of the I guess growing trend of gun violence in the country. Yet at the same time, during the time when people were interviewed to see how all this, whether it's gun violence or Asian community resources in terms of the availability, many people said, they saw the suspect, they couldn't find a way to report to the authority in place, just because whether if their language is a barrier, or the fact that they just didn't have the proper resources in the particular um, a channel that they feel comfortable communicating with. And of course, in addition to that, a lot of times, when our law enforcement officers or community first responders want to help, there are additional cultural or language barriers. So I think, to your question, Marka, is that as a legal professional, we definitely, want to be as resourceful as possible while we are, whether we're representing in court or, representing any cases or even doing volunteer work in the community, to be mindful of the vast, diverse, quote unquote, Asian American communities, just because, not everybody's, Korean, Japanese, or Chinese. There's a very huge spectrum of whether this socioeconomic level or language or education level differences amongst this entire big group.
And you mentioned education as being, of course, the key. And I guess my follow-up question then would be, how would you recommend that, we help more educating people in a law school setting?
Yeah, fantastic question. In fact, I had a fantastic experience at Cooley, well, besides the Wailing Wall. But the fact that we had such a diverse student body was very impactful for me, because granted, I mean, I may not know every single culture or every single community, but I know a friend, I know a classmate who is able to help me bridge that, whether it's language or cultural gap. So I have those resources available within my school setting to, to provide that channel if I want, if I have the ability to help out in certain ways possible. So to answer your question, I think this is something that will be very important to continue to, from a legal perspective or legal education perspective, continue to broaden and your, I guess, your networking circle, not just within your particular group, with your class, definitely utilizing the alumni resources, that's, beyond just who you see or you encounter online in your day to day. Being at Cooley, we have, a very fortunate banks of all the alumni across the world, literally. So it doesn't matter where you go within the United States or different part of countries, or different part of the world as well. You will have that resource available if you want to reach out. So with that being said, I think it is important to actually, when you do want to volunteer to help out, to reach out to other people, whether it's going from school as a starting point, or just reach out to people who you think you can help out in a community that will be likely impacted.
Thank you. You mentioned, I love that you said broadening our networking circle and using, the alumni database. I'm wondering, because I was actually thinking as well in my mind, I'm like, I don't know the statistics. I don't know the percentage when we talk about like students who are actually enrolled in law school of Asian American and Pacific Islander heritage students. But I would imagine that at least just from my perspective, looking, how do we increase those numbers? Would you recommend using, our alumni database as a way to sort of help doing that? Or are there any other thoughts or suggestions that you would have on increasing those numbers? Because I would also, I would think that, the more representation we have in the legal community, the better off we would be as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question too. I'm not an expert of increasing enrollment in any school, but I do think having experiences that you share with the alumni, whether it's association or different chapters around the country, will let people see the real picture. And to be very objective, I mean, a lot of times, people when they are investing their time and money into a higher educations like law school, like medical school, what they most of them will see is the ranking. Now, ranking is probably not in our favor, based on the time I have gone through Cooley as well as to now. So I think, for us, in order to reach out, we can definitely utilize a lot of the folks who have gone through the program and how they are able to utilize what they have learned through the education experience and the curriculum, and as well as all the experiences from the externship, to let people know the experience that they get is a real world, very pragmatic experience, not just a very much a academic exercise. And also a lot of times, we have a lot of alumni who are doing fantastic work, impacting society, whether it's from a solo practitioner or mid-sized level, or me, now in a more of a corporate setting. You have resources available if you reach out. But I think those are important angles I would probably recommend people to have those discussions, have those uh, contacts with. The reason is I think most people will likely listen or be more interested to find out from real experience. So now with all the technology being available, whether it's podcasts or YouTube, people would like to hear more about how these experiences actually impact one person's professional career as well as the personal trajectory.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I see in chat that Terry has the stats and has let us know that 2% of all lawyers are Asian, up slightly from 1.6% 10 years earlier, while the US population is 5.9% Asian. Thank you, Terry, for
Yeah,
sharing
that
that.
that that is a very small number. Yet at the same time, if you're in states such as New York or California, you will definitely see a spike in terms of the overall number. So I think this is, an interesting stat nationwide, right? Yet at the same time, I remember reading somewhere Asian American overall as a group is also one of the fastest growing minority group in the country. Now with to my understanding, just having conversation with some of the community groups, there are a spikes of Asian American who are interested in pursuing legal profession, just because of the recent pandemic, once in the century pandemic, as well as all this legal issue that derive from the violent situation that we discussed earlier. Now, do they all know? Do the folks in New York or California know about Cooley? They may or may not know. That's something that I think, being in a fairly national level university or law school, I think that's something that we can definitely maybe focus on, and or have that broader reach for people to understand what we provide as a value proposition for a law school.
Absolutely. Thank you. I will invite some of our other guests to ask questions if they have any.
Mark, can you share, we talked earlier, but I know that you personally have felt some sort of, tragically, bias. And could you share with this group some of those things that you felt, you know, you felt were, kind of racially motivated, and then what you did and some ways that people can help? What's the way forward with this? Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, thank you, Terry. It's an interesting journey for me so far because it's a double whammy, right? I came in as an international student, and then, of course, coming up from Asia, and then eventually became an Asian American through this process. So the experience I have is, uh, like it's mentioned earlier, is a little different because initially my understanding is, well, of course, and people kind of make fun of the whether it's the accent or just the national origin whatsoever, because, and that's natural because I come from Asia. And only it took me a while to realize, oh no, those are fairly prejudicial in the sense of based on my look, they're not even uh, bothering to know me as a person and so on and so forth. So it took me a few years to realize, all this experience, you know, um, was somewhat unfair. And of course, having the legal education as under my belt, I was able to learn a little bit more about how Asian American in the U.S. has gone through the entire, um, I guess, the growth path along with our other colored brothers and sisters. Just because initially there was not even a turn of Asian America. And so whether it was Latino or Asians, it was all lumped in as quote unquote colored people at the time. In fact, I forgot what's the particular case name, but Asians were categorically black at the time, and especially that was in the era of separate but equal and so on and so forth. So talking about education, talking about residential system, and also because of the past history of the Chinese Exclusion Act, and it didn't just apply to Chinese, right? It applied to many other Asians as well. So, being of Asians, you could not even own property legally at the time. So all these are stuff that I think, I came to realize and can, come to understand the historical background of it. So for me, there are definitely pure ignorance at the time, thinking, "Oh, I'm just a foreigner coming to America," so didn't really think too much about it. Then, as I get more experience and more educational tool under my belt, I was able to realize, wow, a lot of the stuff were not quite right at the time. And of course, now, with children, they are born and raised in America, and then they're getting asked the same question: "Where are you from?" Right? They cannot just say, "Hey, I'm from California." No, no, where are your parents from? So a lot of those simple questions become somewhat, you know, ignorant as this baseline of the questions. So again, I can only speak from my personal experience. I'm pretty sure a lot of people of whether it's Latino or African American background will have more stories to tell. Now, that being said, there's always a negative connotation about being a minority. Now, is that really a bad thing? If you change your mindset, that may not be a bad thing after all. Is it wrong to? Is it bad to be a bad minority? Well, is Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, or even Warren Buffett of the world, are they the majority or the minority? Right? So, you know, there are definitely a lot of negatives that's going around the world, but how do you utilize your uniqueness to then excel and basically overcome all those challenges that maybe systematically being set up um, or stack up against you? I think that's something that I was able to learn through this process to realize what are you good at, what are you not good at. Then maybe sometimes utilize and analyze the situation to then trying to find a way to create your own path. And because that is a minority mindset, right? The minority mindset of being that pathfinder, being that entrepreneur who is creating a new way, creating a new innovative way to be successful and create your own version of American dream. Because the American dream is not just to America, it's the concept of, making it your life. Because whatever you're given, you're deal with in life, doesn't matter what part of the world you're in, having that freedom to make that choice, to basically achieve your own goals that you set up for yourself, will become something I think will be somewhat valuable. So so I think that's something I probably learned quite a bit from this particular journey.
Thank you. And so what kinds of things, I mean, you are like, your education is, oh my gosh. I mean, I looked at your bio, it was like, wow, very educated, your job history is amazing. So to what you're saying, what kinds of things did you learn from, this experience, this American experience, to kind of take advantage of that?
I'll tell you, I really didn't know much when I first went to Tennessee. And person from Taiwan to then go straight to the deep south, right? And then of course, had my acquired my law degree from Cooley. That was actually a very helpful experience to set up this very strong foundation. I'm pretty sure the saying still is there, right? What doesn't kill you make you stronger. I think that's a Cooley model, right? So, and of course, being born in Taiwan, in a subtropical zone, I mean, snow is definitely not natural to me. So I was able to spend 3 winters there, and I think that built some resiliency as well as some mental grit to basically overcome a lot of issues, whether it's natural or professional. That being said, I think what has allowed me to then navigate through different professional level or educational experiences is the fact that I learned to pick up that growth mentality. Is the pie can always get bigger. You can always find your own piece of pie that you're trying to work on, try to grow. And I think that's a very important thing. And also, I think one of the key tools for me learned from Cooley experience was the fact that the education doesn't stop at the commencement. That's where it starts, because you're now given a tool, whether it's your law degree or eventually a law license, to practice and serve the community. These are the tools. You're given an intellectual Ferrari. Now it's up to you, or maybe I should switch to Tesla Model S or something even faster or better. Um, you're given a very incredible machine, that educational tool, to allow you to continue to grow. To grow in the sense that is a lifelong commitment, a lifelong journey. Because especially now we're talking about ChatGPT, we're talking about generative AI. What you have learned during your degree program may no longer be enough, right? It probably become obsolete in 3 to 5 years, in the future. But then your ability to connect with people as well as continue to learn will serve well, in the sense of being future proof, as well as to continue make every day the best day of your life. I've been very, very fortunate that after Cooley as a legal education, I was able to practice for a decade. I did notice there's a convergence between law and technology. So it took me 3 or 4 years to contemplate whether I was going to go back to get my MBA, which I did. But those, happened to be at the right time, the right place, where I was doing my internship in the summer of 2018. That happened to be the time when the European data privacy right, GDPR, became effective. So that got me into the whole data privacy, cybersecurity field, and then of course, because of my interest and understanding of this trend, what I have able to do is basically to to speak about this new practice in different institutions, whether it's in England or in Boston, as well as handle a lot of interesting projects in different top companies around the world right now.
Thank you. So you talked to me also about AI.
Right.
And is that kind of your, maybe you can, and you're really excited about that. So maybe you could share some more about, I mean, I've seen a little bit of that when you watch the news and everything, but you're the expert. So maybe you can kind of help us understand what this whole AI thing is and where it's going to fit into now and in the future.
Yeah. Well, artificial intelligence is definitely nothing new. It's been studied and researched on for decades. I've been following Dr. Kai-Fu Lee on his work in AI. He actually has a couple books. One is called AI Superpower. The other one is AI 2041, which the second one I definitely recommend everybody to kind of read up on it, especially now with ChatGPT and generative AI. I think the work has not been new yet because it has now reached that chasm or just the the S part of that exponential growth curve. So now more people are aware of it, as well as corporations are now utilizing it to create efficiency. If you actually look into what's happening around the world, I think we are doing okay in the U.S., but there's definitely a huge debate about overall population collapse. In certain countries like China. Or Japan. In fact, they have a negative growth in terms of the population. So a lot of companies, obviously, the with the world data, continue to expand and grow. We definitely need more people, not less people, to do it. But yet, having the people to actually do the job is where it becomes a huge problem because, as you know, I mean, being the educator at Cooley, it takes more than a day or two to actually develop a sound legal mind. Yet the work is just so overwhelming. So you need tools such as artificial intelligence to help you help the entire industry, the economy, to actually expedite and also work on those repetitive problems. Now, with that being said, what does that mean to a education or a degree? Becomes even more important just because most people are in school not to learn a certain set of knowledge, right? Especially, the beauty of American law is that we don't have a specific set of rules. In fact, our legal system is very dynamic and flexible enough to to basically adapt through the change of society and change of time. And I think that's the beauty of it because you learn, obviously, the IRAC formula whatsoever, but you learn to apply the new facts to what's being established in our legal system and then try to make sense out of the new change. And I think that's where it will worth literally millions of dollars in education value, just because now you have that um, experience and also the way to navigate through a very, very difficult problem or the future moving forward. Where a lot of people, maybe they're still crunching numbers, maybe they're still, trying to memorize a set of books. But now with the ChatGPT and AI, if you want to write something, well, guess what? The repetitive work are done in seconds, right? But how do you then still have the ability to come up with new innovative ideas or that particular set of script that fits your particular client's needs? And I think that's where I think it will be interesting to see how it's going to develop and help the society overall as we continue to build that connection with people. With that being said, Terry, you and I, we also talk about how a lot of the use of technology also make people feel less connected, even though people are technically speaking more connected, but they're more lonely, right? So that creates a lot more mental stress or mental issues, or challenges that derive from the adoption of all this technology. And I think these are also something that being attorneys, having the privilege and honor to serve in the legal profession, that we can actually provide and serve the community with. Just because, we obviously know a little bit more about how to navigate through the legal system in different states and different countries, yet at the same time, most people don't. We are the very small minority who have that, that noble, I guess, burden uh, for the legal system. Yet, I think we do have to find a way to utilize this tool to help those people who are in need.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I love in fact, I jotted it down because I love the phrase so much where you said education doesn't stop at commencement. And, you were talking about the need for growth mindset. How does one assist or help or teach growth mindset? Because that is so huge and important, especially when we talk about a lot of the bias that is occurring in our country. You also mentioned, so that's one question. The other thing that I was going to kind of circle back to, you mentioned volunteering at one point, and I'm just curious if you have any specific sort of thoughts as to where volunteering should occur and, how we go about, doing that as well.
Yeah, again, fantastic questions. I think, having that growth concept is definitely learned. I obviously watch a lot of YouTubes. Tony Robbins and all the thought leaders in the space, in terms of how to better yourself and how to adapt that growth mindset. Because I think a lot of people, especially when you're in a very, I guess, in a hostile kind of a combating kind of a arena, a lot of things, a lot of people would naturally think, well, it's a, it's not going to be a win-win situation, right? It's very binary. Either you win or you lose. Yet at the same time, life doesn't stop at the buzzer. Life doesn't stop at the end of the exam, right? Life continues. I mean, as long as you're breathing, every day is a, that's what they say, right? Every day is a present, right? So you have the opportunity every day when you wake up to basically to make a difference, especially, given the wonderful legal education that we have. Now, with that being said, is the world's gonna kind of freeze in time? No, the world's gonna continue to change, continue to grow. I mean, 20 years from now, I mean, I'm pretty sure 10 years from now, we're gonna have probably anonymous cars, driving around everywhere. In fact, 10, 15 years ago, before Uber, before Airbnb, I mean, how many people are really comfortable enough to hop onto a stranger's car or stay in a stranger's place? Probably not many. But you only take a decade for people to be very comfortable. In fact, many people would say, "What do you even own a car in cities like New York? Just hop on an Uber. How easy is that, right?" So the change becomes a new normal. So having a growth concept will become somewhat very important in the sense that we got to be agile enough to adapt to those changes, and then utilizing it for professionally or to the community we serve. That take it to the next point. Are there a lot of people who need help? Yes, they are. Are they able to find help? Or, or in fact, for those of you who may have volunteer in different community events, may probably seen the same 5 to 10 people show up all the time, whether it's from the volunteer side or the ones who are receiving the help. Like, dude, I look at your, alimony paper for like the 6th times already. Come on, you're not just coming here for the free service all the time. I'm gonna give you the same answer. But anyway, those are some kind of the issues, right? But then doesn't matter where you go, whether it's you're in a criminal justice kind of practice or family law or immigration, there are always going to be certain people who are in a volunteer circle but not really be the ones who really need help. So I think there are definitely groups who are doing a lot more outreach. I had a chance to volunteer with um, the homeless veteran groups in California. And those are a very special group too, because those are the veterans who, for example, they lost a bit of benefits, and then of course they got into the situation of being homeless because their family and friends no longer can help, and then they have some addiction issues and stuff like that. But then, that's just a very small part of the homeless problem, right? Are you able to, find a way to help them fight to get the proper benefits back, just because, they are not able to, um, self-medicate properly, and then they got into trouble and then have their benefits stripped off. And those are the stuff that I think from the legal perspective, we can start chipping away slowly but surely to a certain group of people. Now, that being said, is homeless problem, for example, is it a bigger issue? Absolutely, because we do have a housing shortage overall. And second of all, with the quick adaptation or change of the our overall economy, I think more and more people is going to be quote unquote left behind because they are no longer able to work properly. Um, so is that a concern? Absolutely. Is the education going to help? Definitely, because you're able to provide one additional tool to continue to thrive and survive in the fast changing society. Um, in terms of one more thing about volunteer is that most of us are probably dealing with a lot of stress from the practice of law or just the day-to-day responsibilities. Are you able to help out at your free time, or because time is money, right? Are you able to help out those who really need help, or is your practice turning to sometimes low bono or, or pro bono, right? Not of your choice. I think those are also additional questions that we need to look at. Not everybody is going to be able to help, but how do we then create additional leaders in the space who can then work with you together to then bring everybody up together? It's not, again, back to that growth concept, right? So it's not just I win and you lose. It's going to be like, no, let's create a community of leaders so everybody win, because you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? Whether it's in an organization or in a society. So let's make sure we create more winners. And I think our legal education does provide that tool. And I think we are. It's not an easy path, but at least we're providing tool for people who are seeking the help or try to better themselves.
Thank you. Does anyone else have questions that they'd like to ask?
I just want to say, don't talk like that in Florida.
Oh,
You'll be called
well,
a communist.
Well, I'm not in Florida. I'm in Arkansas now. So
Arkansas. Oh, even better. How's the governor?
well, I don't know. Who's my governor? I just moved out here 2 weeks ago, so I still need
the
to figure it out.
former press secretary for
Oh, Huckabee.
the former
Okay.
president.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Good luck, brother.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? Dwayne?
Hey, Mark, it's nice to talk to you and see you. I have a question maybe that predates your time at the law school and coming to the United States, because you have a unique perspective, and I think we can probably appreciate that. What were things like in Taiwan? And is there a sense of, I'm going to use these words and probably use most of them wrong. Is there discrimination in Taiwan against Taiwanese people in particular versus mainland China people? And in China itself, which is a vast, huge country, not everyone looks alike. We know that.
Right. Right.
Is there discrimination there, and how does that work? And what is that kind of environment versus the environment here in the United States? I know people
Yeah.
living in other countries and they tell us what goes on in their country. So I'm always curious to see what people have to say about other places.
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting question. Discrimination is definitely not unique for United States. It happens everywhere, right? Um, Taiwan, same thing. There are different ethnic groups. There are different I guess nationality, because now because of the I guess semiconductor industry that attracts a lot of foreign neighbors. So there are people who are in the island where whether it's high tech or um, more blue collar kind of help whatsoever. So there are definitely discrimination going on as well, and also just the the different dynamic within the ethnic group in Taiwan. The so-called the Taiwanese has different subgroups. So I think to answer your question, the discrimination is not new. Yet at the same time, because most people who are somewhat homogeneous looking, so people cannot really tell from like a mile away. Like Terry can probably spot me as an Asian like from a mile away, right? Uh, so I think that's a unique difference between like the racial makeup of the countries. Now, with that being said, I think that what's also unique in a sense for America is the historical and legal background, or the history that I guess eventually made up the whole redlining impacts. Because what happened was with the racial component also tied in with the economic aspect. So that creates a very, I guess, bad compounding impact for people who did not have the proper resource. So one of the hottest issue that's been debated about quite a bit in California is the fact that a lot of Asians feel that their spots are being taken away to college, for college admission, right? So they say, hey, why are we continue to support the affirmative action? Because these spots should be ours. Well, when in fact that those people, those proponents of those rhetorics, did not understand the historical context, of the separate but equal background, as well as the fact that you know universities, or law schools in this instance, should be experience that reflect the society, right? It doesn't matter what cities you go to in for, in a bigger states like California, New York, or even Florida. These states are extremely diverse, right? So if you have an institution that's mainly just whites and Asians without additional fabrics of this of your community, that is not going to provide you the experience that you need when you come out of the education system and start working and serving those communities. So I think a lot of people don't know that. They only see, oh, if my kids can actually um, um, get into a certain university or school and so on, so on and so forth. So I think that's the very unique nature of that American, I guess, the racial experience. And also because of the socioeconomic impact of redlining, right? I mean, I think Condoleezza Rice has famously said that she could probably look at a zip code and see if the child can actually end up going to university. And I think that's very powerful. In Taiwan, you don't see that. It doesn't matter, whether if you're obviously it's a very small island. Going from north to south, it's like 3 hours, right? So it's a very small island, but in China, it's similarly. Most structure of the country is heavily concentrated in major cities like Beijing or like Shanghai or like Hong Kong. So the socioeconomic makeup definitely is very different compared to the redlining experience in America. So I think that would be something that I would definitely will call out and say, you know, is our government or is our society ready for a real talk or real conversation about, maybe today we're not talking about diversity, maybe we're not talking about equity, but are we at least provide a equal access to people who actually are willing to make a positive change to their lives, right? Because eventually it doesn't matter what color, creed, or background or culture you come from. there, I mean, there are always lazy people, and there are always people who want to make a difference, to hustle to make their life better. Are we at least providing that equal access for those who want to improve their lives? And I see Professor Kevin has a hand up.
Thank you. That was a really good answer. I appreciate hearing that. It sounds that I'm just going to summarize what I'm taking away. The U.S. is maybe a little more diverse than people really think sometimes.
Yes, and it's a
compared to other
very
countries.
yes, and it's a very unique experience, I think.
Yeah, and having your MBA is that we're a capitalist society, which is very different than so many other countries, and democratic and capitalism together sometimes don't mix very well. And I think we're seeing some of those results. But
Yeah,
it certainly, you want to see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, right? That's my
right.
theory.
Yeah, and it's interesting that they say the more business schools you have in a country, that shows the quote unquote better the capitalism is in that particular system, which is very interesting. And I think, to that extent, we also have the highest number of law school compared to the rest of the world. So,
Well, Mark, I have 2 points that I'd like you to comment on briefly, if you could. And one is, I've been fortunate enough to spend a fair amount of time in New Zealand and met with many Maori folks, and their ancient story begins with canoes in Taiwan. I'm wondering, is there still an identifiable indigenous population on the island of
yeah, that's an interesting question too. To my understanding, there are definitely native Taiwanese, similar to Native Americans. Interesting enough, I mean, if you just look at their pictures, I mean, they look quite alike. So I don't know what's the conspiracy theory behind that. But I think this it's definitely interesting. I think obviously we're talking about, I don't know, not just thousands of years ago, but way longer than that. Where I think the world of migration definitely go beyond my normal understanding. So I think that could be some time, but it'll be interesting. But I know for a fact that ever since I was a little, the government in Taiwan has done a pretty good job in terms of identifying the Native American cultures. In fact, initially I thought it was interesting. They have the cultural center for all the Native Americans. Similar to how we kind of bundle like Latino American or Black American or Asian American all together. That was the first step. But then gradually, as that model of awareness become more mature, they are able to help out and identify a more specific segment. So I think maybe this whole experience of diversity, equity, and inclusion is to make sure everybody learn and understand what makes our society, right? Hopefully we provide a equal access and equal availability for everybody to voice their opinion if they want to. And I think this is and somebody did say this is America is an experience, right? It's very different from the traditional Europe, and also it's very different from many Asian countries that's more homogeneous. So I definitely take the goods. There are definitely challenges along the way, but I think united, we stand.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me. I recently was told that in Canada, DEI is DEID, and I always wondered what's the last D for, and it turns out it's for decolonization.
Interesting. Okay.
Which is interesting on a couple of points. Is it relative to the indigenous population of Canada, or is it with relationship to the British Empire, or what exactly? And part of that maybe is what makes America so unique is that our method of decolonization here in the 1700s is a little different than I guess what
we're more rebellious. Yes.
Yeah. So, but that notion of decolonization is global, I suppose, except maybe in the U.S. I don't know. I
Right.
just wanted to say that, and if you have a comment, fine. If you don't, that's fine
No,
too.
I mean that's interesting. In fact, I had a chance to visit the um, British Museum a couple of times. Obviously, they have a lot of collections of all the relics from the world. Um,
Stolen.
yes, there are definitely arguments about that, right? Whether if they're doing a good job collecting all those stuff, or it's part of that colonization history. One thing that struck out to me was, there's a section for all the Chinese treasures, and and if I understood correctly, we're talking about thousands of years ago, so where you had the glorious dynasty like Tang Dynasty, where Silk Road, was a very popular trade routes and stuff like that, spices. So even during that time, I mean, to reflect it to modern day today, we're talking about the U.S.-China conflict or tension, right? Which is probably fairly normal, because even during that time of Silk Road, to Europe, there were two school of thoughts. One school of thoughts was, wow, look at the Chinese. They have such a glorious and complex culture. And the other school of thought is like, wow, look at those Mongols. I mean, they're violent. They're the yellow people are very, very scary. So you have a very two conflicted views in the society, even during that time. So fast forward, probably a couple thousand years, that seemed to not disappear anytime soon. So if I
Well, you got
was
Tibetans and Uyghurs too, so
right, so that also goes to the point where I guess the tension or the conflicts between the haves and have-nots are always going to be there, and we are in a point in time where I guess laws or legal tools are available to more people than before, in the old feudalism, or kind of a monarch kind of a imperial system. So I think, to answer your point, I think there are definitely discussion about decolonization, or try to move away from that history. But would that have impact to our day to day, or um, understanding of people? Yes, definitely. I mean, I think that's where we just all need to be more aware, and to be to have more empathy about how people um, grow up and how people form their views, and be open to a different voice, because I think that's very, very important, especially with the changes that's coming ahead.
Thank you so much. It is 12:55, so it looks like we are out of time, but we want to thank you very much for coming and speaking with us. We greatly appreciate it. And if you have any last parting words that you'd like to share, feel free to do that now, but we thank you very much for coming and
Yeah.
speaking with us.
No, thank you for inviting me to be part of this Asian American Heritage Month celebration. I can't thank you enough, because I definitely owe my whole career, not to Professor Kavanaugh, but to the Cooley Institution. I've been very lucky. Actually, I'm speaking for myself. Both me, my brother and sister all went through the Cooley system, so we're very fortunate to to have the opportunity to actually go through our curriculum, and then learn important experiences that serve us really well in our career. So thank you.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, bye.
Bye.